Well, hello, everybody, and what a privilege again. I think this is the largest summit we've ever had. Privileged to be here today to share some relay scenes and stories about Hope Big. And certainly we've learned over the years the value of telling and sharing stories and the growth of the relay movement. You send me the stories and I get to tell them. You know, some scenes around the country like those in Washington State in a small town in Washington State, or a show of support of painting the town purple from a town in Massachusetts. It helps if you are a paint store. Or a unique way of showing your passion like the mother-daughter relayers in Idaho. But it is about hope. It is about relay has become a great place to share stories, to tell stories, those positive stories that have an impact on the individuals telling them and those of us listening to them. You know, hope is things that embodies the world of relay. It's what we hang on the back of our shirts, in the stands. It's that relay spirit. It really is what we look at for people who are facing cancer and those of us who are trying to eliminate it. And you know, there are signs of relay everywhere, like that elementary school in Victoria, Texas, or with our friends in Delta, or at 19,000 feet on Mount Kilimanjaro, or on a beach in California this year where they had a ceremony that included a paddle-out ceremony on Saturday morning that combined a relay tradition and a surfing tradition to express their feeling of hope. Now, this doesn't look like hope. I'm sorry, that's the paddle-out, sorry. This does not look like hope. This is Joplin, Missouri, a year ago. Hard to see much sign of hope there. This was one of our storage facilities. This happened to have been our former office facility next to a hospital that looked almost as bad as this. But this is Joplin, Missouri in 2012. Still rebuilding. As with a lot of other communities around the country, they're still rebuilding, but relay is a part of that healing process in that community, part of the rebuilding of hope. Relay is still an important activity in that community, still valued. Hope for not only the cancer patients and the survivors and the cancer fight, but part of the hope of rebuilding a community. Relay is also, of course, the true signs of hope. In every relay are the survivors and caregivers, like this young survivor that I met in Twin Falls, Idaho. But there are survivors everywhere. It could be a group of survivors in Belgium. It could be a group of survivors in San Juan, Puerto Rico. Or it could be the 1,750 survivors in Bakersfield, California this year. Yes, that's right, 1,750 survivors at their event. But I get to travel around. In my travels this year with some Georgia staff, I met Miss Mildred from Baldwin County, Georgia. She is a 50-year cancer survivor. 50 years. She's a proud Reach to Recovery volunteer and a proud relayer. She's 92 years old. She just finished walking a very brisk lap around the track with us. We had to run to catch up with her. But you know, you saw earlier that hope at 19,000 feet. This is another way that we can demonstrate hope. These are the people that did it. These are 40 survivors and caregivers, not mountain climbers, 40 survivors and caregivers who partnered with the American Cancer Society from their organization Above and Beyond and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, creating the world's highest relay ceremony. And I think they'll keep that for a while. But you know, there's a lot of stories that are told. And here's a story about the 3rd annual Relay for Life in the Hope Lodge in New York City. A participant wrote in a New York Times blog about her experience. Let me just tell you a little bit about what she wrote. She said, I'm a recent bone marrow transplant person. I've been diagnosed with leukemia since 2011. She says, I wasn't sure that term survivor really applied to her. Not yet, anyway. She had a hard time as she prepared for her life-threatening transplant to treat her life-threatening disease, and she wondered if she would even survive. Now, she wasn't opposed to the word survivor, but just felt a little premature in declaring that mission accomplished. Well, fast forward a few months. She's at the Relay for Life at the Hope Lodge in Midtown Manhattan, and she said the 6th floor was pretty crowded. She said there was lots of tables of food and entertainment. They were handing out T-shirts and calling people to the stage who were survivors. Now, that shirt had a word survivor on the back, and she turned to a fellow cancer patient, and he encouraged her, and he said, hey, that means us. The main event, of course, was a survivor lap, and she had the opportunity with friends to walk along a path inside there where people cheered through lots of tears, she said. But this was her major quote. She said, for the first time since my diagnosis, I felt a sense of elation and accomplishment as I reflected on all that I had survived in the last year, all that we as a community had made it through. Now, a little relay big here. The Relay for Life at the Hope Lodge in New York City made $91,000. Yeah. And from a community in Indiana, a survivor felt compelled to write a note to the American Cancer Society after his relay experience. And he said, my first cancer journey was in 1999. My second was in 2010 with prostate cancer. Living with cancer is always on my mind. When he first received the news back in '99, he was taken back. He didn't really know how to deal with the emotions. He says he didn't like to mingle, kept to himself, never went to a relay. He said he always had his wife go there for him. And this year, he decided to go with her, and he really said he didn't have a clue of what to expect. My wife told me what goes on, but it's hard to conceive of that. I got there, still didn't know exactly what was going on, but I started taking it all in, visited all the booths, and started walking, and continued to walk. He says his doctor says he's a little overweight, so doing a lot of walking was not something he normally does, and he couldn't explain why he just kept walking with his wife around the track. There was no stopping them. They had the opportunity to keep walking, and he said, I can't really explain the driving force behind me. At one point, he asked his wife, why are we doing this? We're experiencing things, the experience that we're having here is the survivor walk. I wasn't expecting anything like this. People clapping for me as a survivor, and the grand of grands was the silent lap at the luminary ceremony. And then he said he got it, as you can see. It was the track. It was his refuge, his release, his healing. He says he'll be back next year. His relay experience turned an ordinary track into something very special. And the final story is from a survivor in Haralson County, Georgia, who shared her amazing relay story, her story of survivorship and hope, her one-day experience. April 20th, she went for a routine doctor's visit and ended up hearing those words, "You have cancer." She says she drove home in a daze trying to comprehend everything. She Googled cancer. Guess what came up? American Cancer Society website. And she spent an hour, she said, looking through everything. She felt overwhelmed. She called the National Cancer Information Center, the NCIC. Says she hates talking on the phone, but realized there was something bigger than herself, and she needed all the help to go through the information from her doctor. She said, I called, and I quote, I called and I believe that this call is what is going to save my life. She said she spoke to the sweetest lady, gave her all the information that the doctor had mentioned, but she also told her about this relay for life that was going on that night. Diagnosed in the morning, called in the afternoon. That night, same day, she was told about a relay being held in her community. She said she'd seen the signs around town, but she didn't know what it was. So she hung up feeling a lot better, knowing that she had all this information about this terrible thing in her body. She decided to go to the store. She passed 3 relay signs along the way. She said she got the not so subtle hint and said the next part of the call changed her life. She went to the school, couldn't believe how many cars there were. Maybe this was a big deal in the community. She got in a golf cart, went to the survivor tent, ate dinner, got a shirt that said, I am hope on the back. And she talked to survivors who'd been surviving for 25 years. She walked in that first lap, everyone clapping and cheering, and then she realized why she was hope. In 25 years, she said, I will be welcoming a person who gets diagnosed and is attending their first relay. She heard about the candlelight service that was happening later that evening, and she said, and you can read it there, sitting in the stands, surrounded by 1,000 people she didn't know, who didn't know her, or her 12-hour experience as a survivor, she never felt so loved or supported as she did then, thanks to the American Cancer Society and the Haralson community. And she said, I knew in the moment of silence that I will win this fight of this thing called cancer because of all of the people fighting for me here at this event. You'll never know how much that night meant to me. How fortunate are we to be part of a movement that has that kind of an impact on people's lives? It really is about hope big. It really is about hope big that really can provide. I'm Reuel Johnson. I work for the American Cancer Society. I'm a relayer.